Hi, hello, and welcome to the Far Side. I am your host today. My name is Austin. I'm the High Priest, and today is one of those days where we have no co hosts, mostly because I am a tyrant and it is difficult to find good help. That said, I'm probably being overly hard on people. People have lives. No one likes to dedicate themselves to the internet like those of us who are so terminally online that we like things like podcasts. Who would have thought? Hey, what's up? How you doing? We're going to keep things short today because it is just me by myself, and let's face it, very few people want me alone talking for too long, myself included. So we are going to skip straight to it. Yes, we have been absent, partly because the Charlie Kirk assassination and me wanting to say anything about it seems like a bad idea until we've, had a little space between understanding what's gone on. Mostly because it is easy to say things, but also because this weird creation that we're in that is one of the most frustrating things I find when it comes to content creation, just as a genre or as anything, is that something happens and everyone decides that they need to comment on it like their opinion means all. That actually blows my mind. That truly blows my mind. But that gets me to the whole point of this whole thing, where I view the Charlie Kirk assassination as, look, you kind of have two main things that have happened. One is that it was some grand intergovernmental conspiracy in which he was assassinated by someone that did not like him or did not like what he was saying or doesn't like a turn that he was about to take. We will go into tinfoil hat conspiracy land here in a second. However, there is a very realistic possibility that Kirk was shot by someone that's story, say this Robinson kid, it's so like banal is the word that it doesn't fit into the way we kind of want something like this to happen. And yeah, I don't mean people want this to happen, some people do, but the way we see something like this playing out, a lot of people want it to be much more complicated. And again, we'll get to the conspiracy side of things in a second. But I can only speak to this as someone who has spent a lot of time studying narrative and studying the way narrative plays out in audiences and how audiences interpret certain elements of a narrative or of a story that they are being told, both on a conscious level and separately on a subconscious level. So, that said, when it comes to the realistic side, Robinson might just be connected with this Trantifa, Antifa, part of just a group of kids or as many young people. Just they feel like they're constantly being pushed into a corner by life, and the avenues to which we would have traditionally fought injustices or tried to make right problems that you see in the country have been very much clogged. The organs of justice in the United States are very much, I don't want to say atrophied or vestigial, but they are absolutely gummed up and blocked up by, it's a feature, not a bug kind of thing. That all this stuff works so slowly, but I mean, a lot of young people have, I think, a better working understanding, say, at that 22, 23-year-old level, of how the internet works and of the internet. And they have grown up their whole lives with seeing a government that is too old to understand many of the problems that they're dealing with contemporaneously, and maybe too financially out of touch to understand the emotional place they're coming from with much of this stuff. But as well, this gaslighting element that has been created by social media, all these different echo chambers that we're a part of, so much though that we don't realize often unless we get outside our echo chambers on purpose, say creating different profiles that you click things that you are not interested, stuff that you maybe radically are opposed to being interested in, but then you click on that stuff when you create a new profile and you start going down that rabbit hole as essentially a new profile on the internet, a new being exploring this place. And your feed, when you start doing that, especially if you click on interests that you're not actually interested in, for me, it'd be clicking on sports, clicking on, hey, I'm interested in your lifestyle brand stuff. I'm interested in your homemaking things. I'm interested in your arts and crafts type material. And I've got nothing against those niches. It's just stuff that I'm not like contributed in. But then when you link that in with like the politics side of it, you can click and say, oh, I like listening to politics. Oh, I like listening to political talking heads. You will find out very quickly that people that have even slightly different like niche interests to you are going to have a very radically different, potentially political vein through their content that they are being given. Now, this content acceleration machine forces a lot of people to have opinions on things that they don't have all the facts, but also they've started maybe a business out of content creation that they have to maintain. So they got to have the hours. They got to talk about every new uh, assassination breaking thing. You know, if it bleeds, it leads. That's the number one thing. And if it's something this high profile that has so many people turning to the internet for answers because the main government bodies are bungling it up so heftily, you got to wonder, is what they're doing incompetence on purpose, or is it just so incompetent we hope and wish and pray it was on purpose? Guess what? It's not. It's not. I think it's a mixture of, these days you don't necessarily need to create patsies. You don't necessarily need to create um, people that like are the useful idiot. You just find someone that is doing what you already want them to be doing, and you elevate them with money and platform access, aka you say once upon a time are Israel, and this is just hypothetically, but you really like what Charlie Kirk is doing. You promote him, and I'm not calling him a useful idiot in that sense, but he's someone who is taking a more Zionist or pro-Israel stance within conservative politics, particularly as a voice talking to young men and young women on the conservative or Republican, at least leaning side of the political spectrum on college campuses or around college campuses. And one, I mean, you know, hats off to anyone for having debate and willing to like talk with people and doing that stuff. I think that's part of America and having a free, open society. I think when you look at stuff like Germany and Nazi shit going on there and the rise of the far right, I think that's directly correlated to not having any conversation about it, so much so that it forces people like that to hide. And then it necessitates all their conversations going on in secret and never being exposed to the prophylactic that is other people. That said, we in America are suffering from the other side of that, where so much of that discourse is happening publicly that, one, I think people have forgotten that certain things maybe you shouldn't take to the internet to say, just period. Keep that stuff to your friends, you know, make friends, find friends, or, you know, at least do it anonymously. Holy crap. Like, if you want to go and applaud really anything that could be perceived as gross or unprofessional, and you say have a professional job or a job that maybe cares about how you conduct yourself on social media, then maybe don't be celebrating anyone getting shot in any public way. I mean, that's just, regardless of your personal feelings, just keep it off the damn internet, you idiots. That's the part that blows my mind the most. So, because here we are in an era of mass data collection that will be weaponized against us. It just will. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it will probably be weaponized against us in ways that we don't actually understand because of the nature of AI becoming ubiquitous in almost every system in the next like 5 or 10 years. And then the surveillance that's going on with Palantir and all this stuff, Five Eyes, all these other groups, say government groups, non-government groups, or, you know, stuff that is supposed to be a friendly actor but doesn't have us act that friendly. Now, you can't keep putting people in places where they feel like their opinion, voice, whatever, is completely masturbatory. And I think that's a thing that we've realized is, as younger generations start acting more like everything is Gotham fucking City. Well, so here's the thing. Either we're entering into this weird era of these like strange assassination attempts or like actual assassinations of high profile individuals happening in public, in broad daylight. And we either have to admit that America is becoming Gotham City, USA, or and because people have been pushed into places where they feel that no justice is being done, that the systems of justice have been completely corrupted and completely hijacked by billionaire interests or mega massive conglomerating companies that are trying to become the new feudal states of America. What are people supposed to do if you've told us our whole lives that we revolted over a what 2.5 beverage tax, and here we are now just being told that we will own nothing and rent and be happy? Like, okay, that might work for some people, but that's not going to work for everyone. As well as just the fact that you're taking away this thing that many of us have had to take a lot of bullshit on the chin, thinking that we might attain some of what you have told us that we might attain because, we went to do the things that you told us to do. Great, we did it. It didn't work. And I don't know if that's a means of time, that we just need to wait for our time to be successful. I don't think it's a generational thing. I think it keeps being turned into a generational thing by bot server farms. They keep going on and on and on and on and on about how every little problem in America needs to be this culture war instead of just a problem, say, between generations or between the decades of people, between the old and the young, as has always been, mind you. Jeffrey Asmus has a great bit about it, and then these guys, and then their fathers were saying about them, and they just want to dance around and not get the plague. Every generation. Now, but there is a point where, in America, I think we are seeing, in similar ways that COVID showed us police brutality en masse, or other things that we have just noticed in the last 10 or 15 years because of the ubiquity of cell phone cameras, for example, and social media, the internet. You can upload something almost immediately to a platform where it is possible that it is going to go viral and be seen by millions of people within a day. That didn't used to happen. Now, it seems we're at a place, though, that AI is poised to take that over. So we get into the weird side quest of the tangent that I was talking about. And if you're listening this far, great, welcome. You can't keep telling people over and over again that you just have to shut up and take it and expect them to shut up and take it. That's not how it's going to work. So it felt like Charlie Kirk's assassination happened at the peak of that off-gassing event. And it feels like a lot of these events or killings that are highly public are being used as a public off-gas. So sometimes to prevent gas buildup too much from happening underground, say oil derricks or something, they'll light an off-gas thing far away, and they'll rig it in such a way that it's basically just offing a little bit of gas so the pressure doesn't build up to a tremendous catastrophic degree. It feels like that's what's happening to the American people. And that whether or not Kirk was killed by some lone person that was maybe either alone or with just a small group of their friends taking on a really dumb person, really dumb smart person's idea of a overcomplicated assassination, or it was a government and they did a wonderful job in creating so much confusion over this killing that they have essentially weaponized either side of the political spectrum against each other. Now, that can benefit a couple different things. One, there's a lot of stories and things going on around the world that directly benefit from the U.S. eye of Sauron that is the internet and the way that we conduct internet surveillance and searching as a people, not as a government, as a people. Something happens, and immediately this eye of the U.S. Sauron goes over and just blasts information onto the internet that they're picking up from that event, say like Charlie Kirk killing. And everything comes in, and so much of it is, one, so difficult to verify, but at this point I think much of it may have been even AI video that was developed by someone that's not a publicly traded or publicly facing company, but by something that might be, a government. I'm sure the governments have created better internet AI video things at least a couple years out than what we currently have publicly available to touch and play with ourselves. I don't think it is likely that what we have available to us is less is better than what the government has privately. So that's where we're getting all these interesting things. I've seen some people trying to say that Charlie Kirk's the whole thing was a fake holographic 3D thing. Why was there no blood? Why was there all these other things? Why did they pave over it? Why did they remove those cameras that were behind there? And frankly, that's actually one of the more interesting kind of things. Is we've gone in a few weeks from holy shit, this guy just got shot. You know, we don't know what happened. Let's wait for details. To there could have been multiple shooters. There was a shooter behind him that was shooting down into the front. That wound on his neck, the way it hits, looks more like and it acts more like an exit wound than it does a entry wound, which is fair. The one point I would say is if you nick certain arteries or veins, the amount of blood that's going to come out of them is a lot and quickly. Because essentially the blood is falling out of the head, out of the neck. Now, I'm not an expert. I've just, at least in terms of that stuff, what I can focus on is how this whole thing with Kirk feels like a giant morality play or thing that has been done to, like, this Roman fatal charade, essentially. This giant humiliation, not humiliation ritual necessarily, but this giant, like, folly of kinds. And it's this big, cinematic killing that happened in this very public square place. All these different elements that make it feel like we basically saw depending on which side of the aisle you're on or where you are in the internet sphere, some people saw it as essentially, and I see it to many people in the way it's reacted, as the martyrdom of a religious figure. And we're in this kind of place where religion and politics, especially on the right, but I think that's also because the right has like a religion assigned to it, where the left, woke ideology is what we might call it, is essentially their religion. It is, you could say, like an aspiritual or very humanitarian type, not humanitarian, like humanist type thing. Very individual, self-fulfillment, go do your thing. But that's where it goes around and it becomes, hey, you meet your own individual fulfillment so radically that it becomes kind of this spiritual fulfillment, and you find yourself, boom, shooting out the other side to then fight for the rights of others. Godspeed. Who knows how much of this is going to get released to you. But, so, once upon a time, in ancient Rome, now when I was looking for sources, I was having trouble finding sources. I know I've heard this from reputable individuals, say like Dan Carlin, or other people as well, but the internet is a little bit fucky-wucky right now, and Google searches are a little difficult because everything I'm reading is essentially AI slop, and it's difficult to parcel through the AI slop to actually get to real articles. And ChatGPT, Grok, all that stuff, one, uses way too many resources for me to comfortably use for research, and two, just is wrong a lot more than people would like to assume. Excuse me. So there were these plays that they would do that were usually religious in context or part of a much larger milieu of cultural stories that are stories about how like people should be living or people should be behaving. Now, they would take condemned criminals, say like if you were known to commit a crime or a heinous act that was so egregious, it was essentially a stain or mark on humanity. That this happened all the way up until the Middle Ages, and or at least early Middle Ages, before in medieval Europe it switched over towards like a public execution and a reading of crime versus trying to make it a morality play. So the ancient Romans, with the fatal charades in the first to third century CE, had damnationes skynikai. Probably got that wrong. Were, quote, public executions staged as dramatic reenactments of mythological scenes, not traditional plays. So these hybrid spectacles of theatrical, gladiatorial games and ritual punishment. So condemned criminals, the noxi, or lower status people, humiliores, slaves, or foreigners, or these accused of serious crimes, say like a patricide or treason. If you committed some of these, because sometimes they would just go, well, we don't really have anyone. Does anyone have any slaves that we could use for this? They viewed these fatal charades as a bit of a spiritual cleansing ritual for the social organism. So if someone committed a bunch of, terrible murders or committed a bunch of treason, patricide, matricide, the acts of killing within the family, there was a lot of need for one, retribution amongst people to get out their anger, to off-gas that kind of hatred maybe that they have for their other oppressors. If they don't get a chance to exercise that on something, say get out their anger and frustration at the fatal charade or at the public execution, at the public hanging, at the public morality play, then eventually that would foment and build up and explode in a way that is against, people that are in power, that, it might actually cause big problems for them. So these were a way of kind of reminding everyone of the power of the state. Hey, look, I can make you, the condemned criminal, come over here and do this play in the last day of your life. Learn your lines, you got to do all this stuff. And then halfway through the play, I'm going to kill you, you, the actor, as befits the story. So in this reenactment, however this character, this mythological person died, so too do you die. And it was generally a public torture-based execution, and it was probably pretty freaking horrific. And everyone walks away going, oof, I'm not doing that. Not committing that crime. All right, not doing that. But also they could have come away with, oh, how dare anyone act against the name of the state or the will of the state, or how our republic and the deep values that we have, how dare they act treasonous against this? Kill them. Hang them by their thumbs, yes. Let us all laugh and throw rotten fruit at them while they die. So, pretty bad, pretty horrific. Then you fast forward as time goes on to the Middle Ages, and in the Middle Ages, you had these morality type plays that would go on that were similar to this, but it was usually the condemned were being put in the place of a saint that was then shot or executed, and the play and the execution were viewed as, instead of a spiritual cleanse for society, a spiritual cleanse for the individual that had sinned, and that had sinned so mortally or grievously that the only way that they can achieve a certain level of paying off that sin or forgiveness for that sin is this social element where they would torture this person or shoot them with arrows, say like this, if they were doing like a Saint Sebastian blade. Again, I know I've heard that one from like Dan Carlin and read that once upon a time. I have not been able to find that modern source. If anyone out there can find that for me, that would be fantastic. I would really appreciate it. But there are other times and places in human history in which they use theater and a public execution, torture session, ritual sacrifice to tell a very important cultural norm or cultural way of acting or religious way of acting or religious means of behavior that is condoned by the church, by the state, by the king, whatever, and hit home as heavily as possible amongst the audience, amongst the public, by traumatizing them and making them watch someone getting killed right in front of them. Does that sound familiar? Is the scene I am painting sounding familiar to something that has happened recently? All right, so now we're getting into tinfoil hat territory. Because either way, whether Kirk was shot by Robinson or whatever the fuck's name is, I don't think so. Frankly, if I'm just going to give my opinion, I don't think that guy did it for a few reasons. One, too much of the evidence that they've put out doesn't feel like actual evidence. It feels like what a bad screenwriter thinks is good evidence for this kind of crime. So much of it is so idiosyncratic, and the way that the feds have handled this investigation is so backwards and bungled as to be inherently deceptive or by the public treated poorly as such. Now you have this crazy weird guy over here saying morality play thing. Well, here's the thing. He very well could have been shot by Robinson, and this could have just been a very isolated incident. But then they're trying to tell us that 30-06 just kind of hit his neck and he has bones of steel and nothing happened. Well, I've seen a bunch of special forces guys or ex-military dudes that have shot humans, and they are losing their minds over that one, because any of them that have, gone to war and used weapons like that against other humans kind of know certain things about that they can't really talk about on YouTube or TikTok, because it is violently breaking those terms of service, even in the pursuit of education, to talk too much about that. So that right there, very suspect. And then I've seen plenty of videos, and who knows if any of this is doctored evidence from AI or CGI. I don't have access to the metadata. None of us do. Many of the people putting forward these videos and pictures as potential evidence or as something that is suspect is inherently also suspect, because many of us don't have access to the metadata. We don't have access to the conditions in which it was shot. We don't have access to the people who took the shot, who did any of this stuff. All of that is a mystery. And so in that place of so much of this being mystery, it would be very easy for foreign actors to slip in a video or a picture here that is incongruous in a way that creates heightened political discourse and division in a highly talky, angry, politicky United States. So now, here we are at the end of all this. And again, I'm not going to get too much into the tinfoil hat side of it, because all of that is so on the internet that it bungles my mind and blows my mind, but also so much of it is crappy fan fiction created by people that are just trying to incentivize their social media and to create content. And well, what do? They open up the internet, and many people just pick kind of the first top 3 things that they see and go, hey, I'm going to talk about this, or I'm going to put this forward. Well, that creates a never-ending cycle of, one, people feeling the need to comment on things that, frankly, it's getting boring. We're at a point where there's so much to talk about, there's so many people talking about it, that if you're genuinely not interested and it's just, hey, comment this, comment that, content this, then great. But people are starting to lose interest in small content creators that they don't feel are giving good information or good advice. So if you've made it this far, thank you, fantastic. And that's one reason why Candace Owens is getting like 4 or 5 million views on each episode that she's doing. But it's also because Candace Owens is acting as an organ of this morality play. So are all these media people that are talking about this constantly. So is Erica Kirk in the pageantry that is going on after Charlie Kirk's death. Now, I'm not going to tell any widow how to grieve, and she could very well be heavily medicated on a lot of, beta blockers or anything like that. But when I watch a lot of those videos, you know what I see? I see a Broadway actor doing her best to play for a theater and for an audience. Now, she may be genuine in her feelings, but she is acting when she is up there. She is performing. She is a trained performer. There's a lot of, stuff in her past that says she knows how to be in front of a crowd. One of the problems is, and again, this is where it's like, it's hard to say everything is planned and everything is this massive operation. Could be. It could be. But I would think that they would have picked someone who would have been a more convincing film actor, if that's the case, than someone who is better for a stage. Because this is the social media age, and the theater is not the theater anymore. The public square is now in our hands. We can see what's going on in the public square through our cell phones, and thus we are all part of the public square conversation. It's why it's so easy to tune out so many of your content creators that you used to listen to, because so many other people have come in and crowded out the space and talked about the thing that by the time your favorite content creator comes to talk about it, you've already listened to 3 or 4 videos on the thing, right? How many of you are actually going to click on Charlie Kirk and stay through to the end? Because it's been talked about ad nauseum. But I would like to see that this whole thing, if you, the audience member, can kind of see this morality play element that's playing out with all of this stuff. And again, I don't want to get too into the specifics because so much of the specifics might not actually be specifics. They might not even be real information or facts. It's just what's there in the ether, and it could be put out by an Iranian server farm, a Chinese server farm. I still think one of the craziest things with Kirk's assassination is, what if it was like some country that, maybe is kind of friendly with us, maybe we give a lot of money to, but, relied heavily on Kirk being a talking head for their operations, and then the second he stops being lockstep with them and their operations, that all of a sudden he gets shot in a way that completely consumes the oxygen in the American public square conversation for a few weeks, but in certain echo chambers, especially if it is not your echo chamber, is still firing hot. And, I can't blame these people for being fired up, because from their perspective, they watch someone they respect to the level of, honestly, and this may sound silly and it may sound even pejorative of me saying it, I do not actually mean it to be diminutive or pejorative in any way. It's more just speaking a direct, sociological view of how this is kind of making its way through society, the martyrdom of a religious figure, and how much of that has been put forward. But then also you have the surveillance state element of it that's going to accelerate a lot of this stuff. I've seen so many memes and reels in the last 2-3 weeks that are like, how it feels to send bro a racist, anti-Semitic meal. How it feels to come out to my whole family as an Israel hater. How it comes out to as I'm trying to talk, and it's like some Nazi dude in a Nazi outfit and making some Nazi thing, and it's like, your pro-Palestine girlfriend sees you at home before you thought she was coming over for the date and you were just hyping yourself up. All these things where it's like, it's so obviously weirdly performative and racist and ridiculous that it comes across as, to me, internet memes, server farms that are linking back to Palantir or some other surveillance thing, wanting you to like, share, comment, whatever, these racist reels that aren't actually like racist, they're about being racist. That's the thing that's weirdest to me. So it's like how it feels to send bro a racist reel. You're just telling on yourself. You're just playing into this bullshit, but also you're not actually doing or committing or saying any racism. You're just being like, this is a feeling. Well, okay, Palantir is now doing that and logging that you have liked, shared, comment, whatever you have done to interact with this stupid honeypot. except instead of it being a hot chick or a hot dude, it's literally just a semi-spicy meme, and everyone's telling on themselves. Well, here we are in the comment sections or the posts of all these people after Charlie Kirk's death, and they are a ton of people either on the right or the left. One saying some version of, yeah, get them all and shoot them, all that crap. Which, great, yeah, if you get fired for saying something like that, that's on your employer and you. Like, you don't, freedom of speech does not go to your boss, and especially if it's not a government office. That said, I am a freedom of speech person, but you're not protected from freedom of consequence. That said, I feel like that thing gets used a lot as a means of, well, I'm going to act like a piece of shit to you, and that's the consequences of your actions. It's like, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that if your employer that is running a business that might lose out on business because their employees are talking about a bunch of political stuff that has nothing to do with the business and might lose the business money, might jeopardize the life and health of the business, yeah, I might get rid of that employee too. Like, guys, it's the internet. If you want to say something wild and crazy and hateful, do it anonymously. Remember, it's not that anonymous unless you really know how to do it anonymously. And two, maybe just say it to a friend while your cell phone is in the other room. Just get it off your chest and then move on. Like, don't make a bunch of posts about it, because the internet is forever, air quotes, and people are going to be able to bring it up and say anything about it. But you also got to wonder how many of these other countries, say, like that one country that's super friendly with us that might not like certain things that Charlie Kirk was saying before he died, might directly benefit from having a bunch of people lose their jobs very publicly online in this continued morality play, in this continued sacrifice. Maybe someone else is benefiting from the continued way we are at each other's throats, tearing each other down over this. Maybe. Now, that said, there is another side of it on the right where I've seen people going off and saying, well, he was the one who wanted to talk to you. All you guys want is people getting killed, and you're celebrating it. And he was the nice one. Wait till you see what happens, happens next. And it's all this like vague, threatening language where you're like, look, it's one thing to be angry and upset at people for handling the death of someone you viewed with respect and even look up to, and even have kind of almost a semi, albeit deeply parasocial relationship with this individual, that you put him up there and kind of like a modern day saint. Hey, great, that's your thing. One, you can't get mad at people for disagreeing with you too much, because I thought freedom of speech, like, you can get mad at them, but you can't like act on the anger to a certain level if there is just disagreement. If like some of these guys that went to Charlie Kirk vigils and like started counter protesting, and people got mad at you, got hit in the face. Dude, 1 + 1 = 2. It's like, come on, actions, consequence. Things beget things. I'm not excusing anyone's idiotic behavior in any of this, but it seems like everyone is so caught up in this, we gotta morally police everything and the way people are acting and what they can and can't do, what they can and can't say, in a way that is, I think, benefiting surveillance companies more than anything else, because on the left, a bunch of people are saying some stuff that's like quasi-treasonous, seditious, angry behavior that maybe they wouldn't be saying if they're not seeing it being said a bunch. Like, oh, get the other ones, do this, go after that. Like, all that. If they're not already seeing all of that in their echo chamber, then they probably themselves would not feel comfortable enough to post it. How much of what they are seeing is real people and not just bots? The answer is not zero. If you got on Twitter, Twitter is just a bot radicalization farm. Like, I guarantee most of the people that are interacting with Twitter are not actually interacting with Twitter. They're either getting Grok to like post for them or some other thing that's posting for them, or it's just sheer engagement bait. It's not even actual like people trying to talk about a thing or someone eliciting a zinger and saying some interesting thing. It's just a bunch of people trying to engagement farm, and it's sickening. It's so gross. Because it's just like, are we all so addicted to our cell phones that we can't help but give our stupid opinion about all this kind of shit that means nothing? And oh, it's a comment on Threads, like, what are women doing? What are men doing? Hey, men, what about this thing? Or hey, women, what about this? Hey, men who like this, what do you think about this? Hey, women, what do you think about this? And, hey, liberals, what do you think about this? And what do conservatives? What do the conservatives think about this? And everyone is putting a fan. What do you think about this? Well, you're either contributing to the career of someone that you probably could not fucking stand to be in an elevator with, let alone someone that you actually want to contribute to their fucking career. I guess it's that simple. It's that simple. Or you're contributing to bots, or you're really just playing into a surveillance state's need to know you and your opinion. And then all those people that are saying those vaguely threatening extremist type fascist rhetoric, well, he was the nice one, I'm ready to go crusader on your ass. It's like, you're telling me that Palantir is not also logging you as potentially politically violent? Like, come on, people. Hi, hello, and welcome to the Far Side. It's been a salty one. Maybe Ty will be back next week. Maybe we won't. Yeah.